Good evening. Let me quickly share who was here earlier with Dr. Tony's talk, right? And he talked about a neuroscientist by the same name, Dr. Sam Wang, right? I think he's originally from Princeton, and I'm not that Sam Wang. There's another chiro that I learned that's in California that also has Sam Wang as his name, but I'm not him either. So I'm the other Wang, right? I'm the youngest of three boys. And as I was growing up and playing any sport, right, because my brothers were really good at everything that they did athletically, that I had the I don't know what's the best way to describe it, the come from up, I don't know, I was called Little Wang. Little Wang, right? Because I was the youngest of three boys. And so I just had to always like persevere and kind of always kind of had to get, be better and all of that. So anyway, Chiro One Wellness Centers, I started a business program back in 2013. And those of you guys who fly on airlines frequently, if you kind of look near the back, and especially like I think United American, there was a executive PhD program from Oklahoma State University. Did anybody see that ad or whatever? I was the second class that started that because I kind of went through the kind of full circle of, I'm a chiropractor and I did business by, as a chiropractor, and in fact, it was always accounting by a chiropractor, right? I used QuickBooks, and we ended up getting the official title as Chiro One Wellness Centers as the largest enterprise user of QuickBooks. Like they literally told us through tech support that they can't support the amount of offices that we were running and that the system can crash at any given moment because we didn't have a good enterprise management system. It wouldn't support the number of units we had. So it occurred to me, especially as people were using terminology that I wasn't familiar with, that I really should kind of learn some business acumen, right, of how to operate these things that we call practices to take it to the next level. So anyway, two disclaimers that I want to share. I am not, number one, I am not a professional speaker. You guys, it'll be really evident in the next few minutes. You guys will learn, that I don't do this for a living, and for sure I don't get paid to speak. I really, and as my, let me forward already, right? As my title, I'm the chief operating officer, so I'm the number two. I'm the guy that, I'm not the front man, I'm not the lead singer. I'm the guy like behind the scenes doing the things and stuff. And so when, I get invited to speak about what it is that we do, I'm always hesitant going, I'm not the stage guy. I'm the guy that I'd rather have the conversation kind of one-on-one with people and talk to people on the side rather than get on stage. But this was a great opportunity because I thought, what better than talk the tick for students? And I originally thought when Dr. Gilles called us and said, hey, would you be interested in a sponsorship? For me, that was, of course, right? Supporting future leaders of the profession, absolutely, not even a question or a hesitation. And then I think Sierra, who I want to really give special thanks to because she kind of put up with my craziness and my hectic travel schedule, that she said that there's a speaking portion, right? And I'm going, I thought it was just kind of an acknowledgement of thank you for, sponsoring, and I would just go on stage and wave and say, you're welcome, right? And then all of a sudden she said, I have 18 minutes. And unfortunately, I don't really get good at talking until minute 21. So you guys won't really get my best stuff tonight, but I'll be at the bar later, right, after the competition. So I'm going to be in the zone at that point, right? But I want to thank Sierra and Dr. G and Jason and Guy. This is my first Rubicon, and I have been so in the weeds, like my head in the sand, and just focused on growing practices, right, developing chiropractors, and have no clue how awesome, this event is, and kind of the opportunity of the great speakers that you guys get, in front of. Those of you that don't know, I went to Sherman College. Dr. Koch was my 730, philosophy 1 at that time, yeah. And I don't know if Dr. Koch even remembers, but when I was going through the student clinic, he was a patient of mine. I did upper cervical, I did AO work in school, and he wanted to get under upper cervical care. And so, the president of the school approaching a student, right, saying, "Would you take me under care?" And I'm going, "Oh my God," right? No, there's somebody that I would know, and so it was an honor to be able to treat him and then really kind of set up the growth of kind of how I was going to practice, really. And so I am talking tonight on the ideal practice, but here's the interesting thing. I'm going to switch lenses, because a lot of times, in conferences like this, we talk about the ethereal kind of aspects of what practice looks like, and, defining the picture and thinking the feel and, who we want to serve, right? And so I want to do at least what I've seen that sometimes is missing in practice, meaning how do we quantify what our ideal practice is going to look like? How do we quantify that? So hopefully after the next 11 minutes, if I don't get off the rails too much and follow these slides that I prepared, you will have some KPIs, key performance indicators, metrics that you can kind of hold yourself to be able to kind of define that picture of what practice should look like, right? Because for sure, you should have the pictures of what ideal practice looks like, and then the roadmap of the things and stuff, the KPIs that can get you there, right? So we'll go without further ado. And so I talked about 1 and 2, great. All right, so as we graduate school, no, here's the other one. I thought I was coming to a group of students, right, in terms of who my talk was going to be, so I apologize for the chiros that have been in practice enough years where you are already measuring your success and have defined outcomes and all of that, because it will be boring as I talk about the common denominators of successful practice. But anyway, back to the slide as I'm already going on a tangent, right? So you've got 3 kind of fields, if you didn't know, as students coming out of school, that you can kind of focus on, right? Academia, right? We know that you can go and teach, and you can go into research, you can go into all sorts of cool scholarship, right, ventures, and then business. Most of us, if you haven't kind of seen, as the vendors are out there are a lot of DCs that are supporting the various businesses within our profession. And then majority of us kind of choose the clinical route, right? 85% of us, give or take, choose the clinical route. But just like how I drew these 3, I didn't really draw it, but how I kind of structured these 3 lenses, right? They're overlapping. And so as a clinician, as a sole proprietor, we have to know a little bit about research and education, right? And then we also, for sure, as a sole proprietor, have to operate our businesses, right? And so it kind of overlaps, and I thought that was a cool diagram to be able to show that. And then I'm going to segment clinical practice into the business side of it. Again, I apologize in advance if I'm going to offend some people, because I'm going to talk numbers, right? And more importantly, I'm going to talk dollars, right? Because I think as chiropractors, we don't get that information as we're going through school. None of the academic institutions really do a sufficient job teaching you some common reports, i.e. a balance sheet or an income statement or a cash flow statement. We don't know any of that. Unless you had business as an undergrad, we don't have that information and that knowledge. And so instead of doing what I did, which was, again, accounting by chiropractors, you can actually study a little bit of business and then apply that to your practice as you come out and practice. So we're going to talk we're going to talk a little bit about revenue and expenses, and then more also specifically in the 8 minutes left, we're going to talk about the analytics side, right? Measuring whether you're accomplishing your ideal practice, right? Whether you're going to accomplish your ideal practice. So again, I found some cool graphics on what you do, and hopefully a lot of chiropractors that are practicing today can agree with this, that we're constantly balancing, payroll and rent and, revenue cycle, which is called billing and collections within our industry, right? But the healthcare as a whole calls it revenue cycle, and then compliance, whether you are a cash practice or you're an insurance practice, you are still held right, to the standards of our profession. And then all the training, not just individual, right? You're here and you're learning about, and defining and developing your certainty in chiro, but also about the support staff, because if you didn't realize, your support staff in your practice will spend more face-to-face encounter time with the patient than you will, right? And do you just leave it by default of what they hear you say for them to be able to, do you have a system to train your staff to educate and stay on purpose in your practice, right? So we're constantly, as sole proprietors, juggling that. And so here's some, use your phones if you want. We have this presentation if you want to have it afterwards so that you don't have to scribble as much. But these are some common KPIs regarding solo practice, right? So pretty self-explanatory, right? But net income, right, is how much you want to take home. I know this is going to be a little uncomfortable because anytime when we talk about money, right, we talk about personal income, we talk about personal finance, a lot of times we get a little squirmy in our chairs. But I think that's really, really important because at least the way I was brought up and trained and the difference in the lives of the patients that I served, I believe that chiropractors should be the highest paid physicians on the planet. Anybody else agree with me? Right? I don't personally believe, and I don't want to offend anybody, but I don't personally believe that collecting as much as you can for the service you're going to offer, right, is mutually exclusive to providing the service, from your heart. I don't think they're separate. I think we can actually charge a lot of money and have patients that love what it is that we do. So hours by week, it's so hard, I'll tell you. When I see this little time clock, my wife should get one of these for me because to stay on track like this, hours per week, how many hours you want to work, right? I apologize. Day ones per week, how many new patients you want to see. So these are common KPIs within our profession that as we talk with each other, and we talk about, as chiropractors, when you go to practice management seminars, it's the first, 1 or 3 questions that we ask each other. How many are you seeing a week, right? To kind of gauge how well you're doing. We talk about these common denominators. Adjustments per hour and dollar per visit. Well, how do you calculate? Because again, it's pretty self-explanatory what these KPIs are. So what I did was I took Chiro Economics, May 2017, right? Because I don't think the 2018 numbers have come out yet. But I want to quickly identify, in 2017, you can see the column on the left here, the average age of this survey, right, of all the respondents, and this is voluntary information that everybody filled out on a survey if you're out in practice. The average age was 48, and again, 80% male. Years in practice was 20, right? Going down a little bit, the hours per week, if you can see, was 35 hours per week. Right above that number of employees was 3.9, so 4 employees. The PVA, which stands for patient visit average, was 30 there, and the average patient visits per week, 131. Right? PVA, 30, patient visits per week, 131, okay? And so with that information, and then I look at the income comparisons, when you see the average gross billing, what you're charging, usual and customary, right, fee schedule, and then more importantly, gross collections, what you actually brought in, what hit your bank account. Those 2 numbers are pretty important to know when you're operating a business, right? And then obviously what the doctor walked away with, and the very bottom of that, DC total comp, 136, okay? And I'm going to go into then how we get into that. So again, reiterating, 35 hours a week, seeing 7.4 new patients per week, 131 regular patient visits, established patient visits, and then again, that 443 total collected, not income, okay? Difference between collected and income, and we'll go into that. How I derived, knowing that data, the average chiropractor, 20 years in practice, male, right, with 4 employees, collects about $65 per visit. So if you're going to do cash, don't go below that. The average chiro is getting $65 per visit. Right? I'm a staunch advocate that I think Chiro should be available to anyone and everyone, right? But I absolutely also believe that we should be handsomely rewarded for the service we provide, right? And so it's $65 a week. You take the 131 per week times 52 weeks in a year, gets around 6,800 patient visits divided by the total collection, which then gets you to the $65 per visit, right? So you could use that formula in your own practice to figure that out. And then how long does the average DC spend? Students, while you're in school, we talk about techniques and which technique is better than others. It's like toothbrushes. They're all great. If they've been around this long, they're all great, right? If you apply them the way they were designed, they're effective, right? And your job is to figure out what supports the way you want to practice, right? But they're all great. But now, knowing that, you go, well, how long does my technique take to see an established patient? How long does it take me to adjust a patient, right? And on a business mindset, that's important because when you fill your schedule book up, if it takes you 10 minutes to see a patient as opposed to maybe taking 3 minutes, we know there's a 3-to-1 advantage, right? You have a lot more openings being able to see a patient at 3 minutes versus at 10, right? Quick example. And then how does this, and then asking the question, does that sound good to you, right? Like how long does it take? Again, I did the conversion of 35 hours a week into minutes, 2,100 minutes divided by 131 patient visits a week comes down to about 16 minutes an average visit, at least. We don't know by the data whether this is specifically the adjustment time or whether this was the entire office visit, right? But it's about 16 minutes a week. And then what are we missing in the calculation? Besides the adjustment, we know through compliance, we have to do reevaluations, right? Re-exams. That takes time, especially the doctor time, right, to assess. And that's important to know, right? So these are the KPIs. And we're cutting down in time. We're going to talk about revenue generation versus actual collections, and we kind of highlighted gross billings and charges, again, usual and customary versus actual collections. And again, just to give you industry average, so you guys walk away with some information, 73% collection rate. From what you bill to what you collect. Really important to know, right? So that whether you are average or you're above or below, right, as you're operating that business. We know managing expenses as a sole proprietor is really, really important, right? We're pinching pennies, we're counting every cent. Here's kind of a list, and again, you guys are welcome to take a picture of this if you're not used to operating practice, but I would really, really highly recommend you know every cent that goes out of your practice. Where's it going? What's the ROI? Have you heard a couple of other speakers talk about return on your investment, right? What are the kind of average expenses, right? And again, payroll, rent, utilities, malpractice, all the stuff, totals about 306. This is my kind of calculation knowing the back end, but again, it wasn't published in Chiro Economics. Well, then we subtract the total collected minus the 306 expenses and then a net income of that 137, right? And does that sound good to you? I don't have any judgment. However you want to see your practice, your ideal practice. You either go, this is the lifestyle I want to live. 136,000 is phenomenal. It's like 100 times more than I thought I'd ever make. Or you go, I can't manage a family off of 136 because you take the taxes away, right? We have to pay Uncle Sam. Is that enough to live off of a family of however many you want to have, right? Now, working in your practice versus on your practice, I really implore you in my short remaining time, you really take a step outside of kind of being the servant, right, and being the chiropractor, and put on, take the physician hat off and put your business hat on, and really look at your numbers. Really look at your numbers, because again, I think to ensure success in our profession as chiropractors, we absolutely have to have the financial aspect of that. Wouldn't it be great if my average clinic director in my organization, we've got 41 offices up in the Chicagoland area, my average clinic director took home last year in 2017, $220,000 take home, right? And they did no marketing. How cool is this? They did no marketing, they do no billing, they do no team trainings. They're responsible for coming in, educating patients, and adjusting their patients. And then they check out Thursday night because we have 3-day weekends, right, for balancing your lifestyle. So I really want you guys to use that formula to find and determine the, again, hours per week, the patient visits per week, and dollar per week. And then again, coming down to what your net income is, and as I come to finish up, hopefully you take all of these KPIs and you wrap them up and then you develop what your practice or your dreams are. Because here's the thing, I want you to walk away with not thinking there is a defined outcome of how successful practice has to look. This is individualized, this is unique to each and every one of you, right? It doesn't have to be that you see 500 or 1,000 a week, right? It doesn't have to be, you know, that you see 50 a week and there's anything wrong with that. It's perfect. It's absolutely perfect. It's really what's perfect for you, right? But you've got to define that. You've got to quantify that so that you have that roadmap to say, here's where I started, here's where I completed at the end of year one, and did I hit those metrics, right? And again, hopefully, your dream practice reflects the outcomes that you stated. Thank you for your time, guys.